So, hi everybody. I'm Sandra Shapiro, Development Officer with Community Future Cedar Lake. Welcome to looking at creating a childcare co-op in our community. I'd like to introduce Kathy Edwards, and she's with Cooperatives First, and I'm just going to read her bio because I really like it. So Kathy is Cooperatives First entrepreneurial wizard who guides steering committees, which somebody's going to form tonight, deftly through the process of planning their business. She helps group identify their markets, gauge the feasibility of their plans, pull together a budget, and much more. She has a superpower, and she takes large projects and breaks them down into manageable pieces and pathways. She loves helping groups incubate their ideas into reality, and they love working with her to meet their goals. And I'll tell you, I chatted with her a little bit, and oh my God, she's going to be amazing. She has a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Saskatchewan and a law degree from the University of Winnipeg. She left law to pursue entrepreneurial ventures and hasn't looked back. She has a passion for startups and has successfully launched and managed several ventures. Fun fact, in 2023, she was a recipient of YWCA's Women of Distinction Award for Entrepreneurship. And I know she has a cat. And so I'm going to turn things over now to Kathy, and let's have some fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. You should get yourself a cup of tea now and relax, Sandra.
Yeah.
I'll just be sharing my screen here momentarily and get the presentation rolling. Terrific. So I'm hoping everybody can see. Oh, my screen is black. Is anyone seeing the presentation screen? No. Okay. See, technology is not our friend tonight.
There we go. There we go.
Okay. I should be able to see. I should be able to enlarge it. Now we've got it. Awesome. So as Sandra introduced me, I'm Kathy Edwards, the entrepreneur in residence at Cooperatives. And I would kindly ask for everyone in the background to mute their cameras or mute their microphones.
Right here. Jeff, Bentley, come here. Look.
Michaela, can you mute?
Oh, sorry.
No worries. Terrific. So even though this event is taking place in a virtual space, I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Treaty 6 territory, which is home of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. We acknowledge that this land was not ceded, but for the purposes of the treaties was to ensure that the land would be shared. I want to take a moment to thank everyone for joining us. This is one of the advantages of COVID-19 is that we're all very comfortable getting together in virtual spaces. So I'm able to join you from Saskatoon tonight, where it is bitterly cold and snowing. So I hope you're having better weather where you are. So as Sandra mentioned, my role is entrepreneur in residence, and particularly with respect to this project, I am spearheading the cooperative childcare expansion. So we have been lucky enough to secure funding from Prairies Can to roll this program out across the Prairie provinces, which is Alberta, Saskatchewan, and of course, Manitoba. So if you don't know about Cooperatives First, I wanted to share a little bit about who we are and what we do. So Cooperatives First is a not-for-profit organization that is wholly funded by Cooperatives First, by the Federated Co-op and the cooperative retailing system. So we are essentially like an incubator. We provide education and support for all kinds of startup cooperatives, both for-profit and not-for-profit. Our services are free of charge to our clients, which makes us very popular. So we work very hard to help build sustainable cooperative businesses and enhance economic growth. And as I mentioned, we were very lucky to receive Prairies Can funding for a focus on a project for childcare development. So I'll just give you a very brief agenda of what we'll touch on tonight. I want to talk about childcare and why it's so important for communities. And
Can someone tell Dean to do the dishwasher?
if everyone could mute, that would
Oh,
be.
why is that not muted? I was not on.
Thanks, Donna. So we're going to talk about why childcare is vital for communities, and we're going to actually take a bigger lens view of it, as opposed to just talking about why it's important for parents. We're going to talk a bit about the cooperative model and what it is generally and how it can apply as a really great fit for childcare. And when we talk about childcare cooperatives, we want to talk about a model that isn't necessarily a wholly parent-run endeavor. So we'll touch on that. And then we're going to talk about the assistance that we can provide for your cooperative startup through Cooperatives First. We made a point under our project to really reach out and try and talk to communities, but not just parents in those communities, but particularly economic development officers, municipalities, and other organizations that have a vested interest in seeing childcare being developed. And when we talk about childcare, people often think of it as more of a social service, and don't really think about childcare as an economic driver. But what we do know, based on lots of studies and economic evidence, is that childcare has an economic multiplier effect. So that means for every $1 that a community invests in childcare, they see a return of between $1.38 and $2.54. So if they look at that from an economic perspective, a community investment in childcare will pay returns. What is interesting about those studies is that they were completed before the $10 a day childcare model. So it begs to reason that if people have more disposable income because childcare is now affordable and accessible, there will be higher economic returns and spin-offs to that community. It also goes without saying that often childcare falls to the woman's side of the equation. And so providing accessible, affordable childcare is also strongly linked to maternal employment. It also has proven positive outcomes for children. What's really also interesting is the importance of childcare to have a strong rural community. During COVID-19, everybody was focused on the ability to move out of cities, out of urban areas, and have a rural lifestyle with the ability to work from anywhere with our new virtual world. But it is really important to note that working from home does not mean childcare is not required. So if you want to attract young families to stay or visit, grow roots in your community, childcare is a key part of that equation. It also acts as a really important feeder system to your school. And I think if there's any one thing you take away from tonight's dialogue, it's a sense of urgency for this development. There is a timeline on the childcare initiative. So when we talk about the urgency, why childcare, why now? Childcare was identified as a national problem, or actually lack thereof. So the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives has done multiple research studies and essentially has identified the vast majority of the country to be a childcare desert. And if you're not familiar with that term, what that means is that for every one childcare space, there are 3 or more children competing to be registered for that space. So this is not a sustainable model if we want to get people out and into the workforce. So the federal government rolled out a program where there were billions of dollars distributed across the country, and the majority of provinces are focusing on developing not-for-profit childcare and early learning centers. Our role in this project has been to create what we think is a really unique and sustainable cooperative model to help communities build long-term childcare solutions. So, like all good things, they say, the saying is that necessity is the motherhood of all invention. And that is very similar to this project and where we got our start. So the first community that we worked with is sort of a pilot project for this concept. And again, when I say this concept, what I mean is that a childcare cooperative can look different than a wholly parent-run center. And Maple Creek was our sort of test case for this. Maple Creek was not a big community, or is not a big community, had a total population just over 2,000 people, had no childcare. They could not recruit teachers for their schools. They couldn't staff the hospital. And business owners were actually calling the economic development officer in the region and saying, you need to fix this because we can't actually hire staff or keep young people in the community. So what this group did was they got together and they formed a cooperative that involved, yes, parents and interested community members, but it was a coalition between the municipality, the rural municipality, the neighboring Niikanit Nation, and the post-secondary educational institution that provided ECE training in the community. Together, they formed a cooperative. We successfully helped them apply for funding, and they are now about to break ground. They were originally forecasting to open a center to service about 40 children. And just through email today, I didn't update the slide, they are now building for 62 children in the community with a population of 2,000 people. Oops, gotta go back one here, hang on a sec. So under the Canada Early Learning and Childcare Agreement, Manitoba signed up in 2021 and there was 1.2 billion distributed to the Manitoba government. So when I talk about urgency, this is the urgency. The goal was to distribute this funding and create 23,000 new not-for-profit childcare spaces in your province by 2026. This included, of course, also the move to $10 a day childcare. We all know that the political landscape may be changing in Canada. There may be a change in federal government. We don't know if this program will be continued after 2026. But what we do know is that the province has a great deal of money for capital development before 2026. So the time is now if your community needs childcare. We're not sure when we will have these favorable conditions again. So specifically with respect to what is available in Manitoba, I can speak with some knowledge about what all of the provinces look like. And I can say that Manitoba has the most generous capital grant program for the development of childcare spaces. The Manitoba program has provided up to 60% of capital costs to develop a new or expand an existing childcare facility. And the key here is to be servicing children who are under school age. So these capital cost programs, the spaces do not apply to children who are of school age. What is really important to note with this capital program is that there are only certain costs which are deemed to be eligible capital costs under this program. So it does not include land, and it does not include an acquisition of land and an existing building. So really the program is trying to encourage new builds. And as we talk about, how this cooperative can look in your community, one of the great things that a community or rural municipality can do is donate land and or offer tax abatements to help the cooperative get started, because land is not included in your 60% grant of capital costs. But all building costs associated with new development are included with no maximum. So if you are in a region where it is more expensive to build a new facility, you will have 60% of those capital costs available to you. Once the center is operational, there are also a number of ongoing operating and staffing grants to reduce the family cost to $10 a day. So there's a revenue grant. So essentially the government is now paying to top up your revenue or income stream, as well as giving annual operating grants based on the enrollment in your center. The other grant that I'll mention, which is not hugely significant, but it does help, is there's also a one-time startup grant for new childcare centers only for $450 per space for startup equipment and supplies. So your little tiny tables and your water table and your play centers, those sorts of costs and furnishings that you need to get your center started up and operational. So now that we know what's available from a big picture perspective from the provincial government, I just wanted to touch on, the cooperative model, how it works, and how it can apply to a childcare cooperative.
Kathy,
Yes.
sorry, because we talked about this before.
Yes.
Before you go on, I got a message that someone named Jaspreet has a question.
Sure.
Jaspreet, go ahead.
Yeah, I just saw the message from Laura. She said, wait till she's done. That's why I was waiting. I'm sorry.
No,
Oh,
it's
okay.
fine.
Oh, can I ask now?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you just said 60% capital cost, like it's available on the new land, right? So will they give any grant in the basement if we are going to start up there?
Well, what you'll have, if it's in the basement of an existing building, if you have to do a renovation to that space to make it fit or suitable for a childcare center and meet the regulatory requirements for a childcare center, 60% of those costs would be covered by the grant.
It's not renovation, it's a new building basement starting, like it's in the process going on.
So who owns that building?
This is our house and it's the basement is going to be done soon.
In your house?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is only for childcare centers. That would be a family day home. And this is for, this is a different ball game. These are the larger centers, not family day homes.
Okay, then thank you. Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so if anyone else has questions, you can drop them in the chat. Or wait until the end, or just unmute and pipe up, because there's lots of people and I can't sort of see everybody on the screen at once. So to touch on what a cooperative is a legal organization, just like a corporation. So it's its own entity in law, but it's a beautiful blend of people coming together to solve a problem. And one of the hallmarks, excuse me, of a cooperative is its democratic foundation. So it's governed by one member, one vote. So how that's different from a corporation is usually whoever owns the most shares gets to sway the vote. And here it's not about capital contribution, it's about equality of vote. So every member is entitled to one vote weighted the same. All members participate in decision-making through the annual general meeting. And a community service cooperative is an excellent vehicle for a not-for-profit childcare center. And so you can structure it that institutions and individual families can all be different members, but come together under one organization to create a long-term childcare solution. So one of the other perspectives to think about with a cooperative is that it really focuses on community service over individualized profit. It promotes transparency as members are owners of the business and they have access to information, and it's very versatile. So as I mentioned, members can be individuals, institutional organizations, or corporations. So when we talk about applying this model to a childcare center and sort of our unique approach of taking this collective cross-section of players in the community, what it does is it creates a long-term solution. So historically, childcare cooperatives have been wholly run and operated by a parent board of directors. And what you naturally see is that parents age out of needing that facility, and there's a lot of turnover, and volunteer parents are tired. This is the time in their lives where they're already stretched thin. Given what we've talked about when we look at the key importance of having a childcare center to the long-term viability and economic vitality of a community, that's why we invite the municipality, the rural municipality, and any other institutional players to be members of the cooperative to also help ensure that there is a long-term commitment to this community service. So last but certainly not least, I want to talk about how Cooperatives First can help should you want to proceed with exploring a childcare cooperative in your community. So as I mentioned, we are wholly funded by Federated Co-op, and this project is jointly funded by Prairies Can, which means we can offer our services to groups at no cost. The very first thing that you need to do, and this is always the question, how do we get started? What you want to do is form a small steering committee and recruit key community members who want to be engaged in the process. Often we see that this involves either the economic development officer or some representative from municipal government, often a parent who is keenly interested in seeing childcare be created, and or an institutional partner. What we do then is once we have your steering committee, we then move towards incorporation. Cooperatives First also covers the costs of incorporation of the new cooperative and helps you establish your articles and bylaws. Once you have a new legal entity formed, we then move through what we call our coaching program. So through our Prairies Can funding, we have developed a detailed model to help support startup childcare centers. It includes a workbook and a financial model, which lays the foundation for a business plan. So we help you with the steps to pursue the grants, for example, with the Manitoba government, and help you also prepare to pursue other financial supports that will be necessary for the startup. We'll do an operating budget and forecasting, and then we also have operational experts from Manitoba with childcare experience available to support the endeavor as well. So really, we take you from concept with the steering committee to doors open under this program. So that is the end of my formal presentation, but I would love to engage in any dialogue or answer any questions that you may have. My contact is Kathy@cooperativesfirst.com. We have a website that if you Google start a childcare cooperative in Manitoba, it will take you to our landing page on the website. Once you register, you'll have access to our free tools and resources. And your first point of contact will often be Candace. My colleague could not join me this evening, but Candace at cooperativesfirst.com would be an excellent first point of contact for you. So as I mentioned, I will share this slide deck, but I will stop the screen share now. I'm looking at, I've got the chat up. If anybody wants to unmute and ask any questions, I'd be happy to try and help.
I will make a comment before we move forward here. I'm actually the Economic Development Officer for the PAW, so I am in the room.
Right on.
Yeah. And yeah, thanks for the information. I was just wondering from the class, from the group from UCN, how many people will be graduating this year?
So
If
Jonathan,
you have like a
I'm
number.
I'm the instructor.
Okay.
This is our level 3 class. So these are our managers, to be managers, childcare directors. They're just starting their 18 months of their program. So they're all ECE 2s. Most of them are working in a childcare center, but they are also from all over the province. They're not
Right.
just the PAW,
Yeah.
they're Thompson and all over the place. So they will not graduate until June of 2026.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say hooray to all of you enrolled in that program, because the capital grant is only part of the equation. What we need are awesome folks like yourselves who want to be ECEs and see the value in being an early childhood educator. There is such a shortage of ECEs across the country. So thank you for your commitment to the program. You are definitely going to be snapped up for a job immediately.
Many of them are in succession planning already for directors that are tired and done and ready to retire and they're ready to hand over to many of these people their jobs already. So yeah. So Kathy, yeah, on that topic, unfortunately, I mean, I know the reality. Our ECEs in the PAW are making less than our garbage collectors, right? So I have one student in first year, and she's not even from the PAW, she's from Grand Rapids, where we have a program. So I don't, and we have a center, we have the MMF center right now, built, beautiful property, can't staff it. UCN is looking to, is also in the program to expand to another bunch of spaces. I don't know where they're at with that. That's above my pay grade. They don't let me in in those meetings. So I guess that's a big issue. The government has put a lot of money into satisfying the parents with $10 a day. They put a lot of money into, okay, we'll give you the money to build, but they've put no money or very little money. The only reason that our ECEs got raises was because of federal money. They have not put any money into provincial money into the system yet. Previous government didn't do any money into the system. We're kind of waiting to see if the NDP government will step up and put some in. So it's a real challenge. That's a real big challenge, because you can have a beautiful building, but if you don't have the people to staff it, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And that's an excellent point, because we've seen that where there was a lot of really positive publicity about the RTM program. So a lot of municipalities got the brand new RTM dropped off. But what was very interesting is they sort of gifted this building and then went, so how do we find an operator? How do we do this? And that's kind of why our program is unique, is because one of the first things we do is say, you need to start making contact with post-secondary institutions, plug yourself in and start getting on the pathway to hire those staff and recruit those staff members. But part of our purview is also to make this a community focus. And we all know that one of the big topics across the country right now is affordability. And so I'm actually working with a number of housing cooperatives as well. And my speech to communities is, look at this equation in tandem. So we need to hire, we need to provide childcare. Wouldn't it be awesome if there was cooperative housing where your childcare providers could be provided a discounted rent to sweeten the pot and have them committed to your community? So really, I agree, this is not, this hasn't solved all of the problems, but it certainly, my job is to say, take what we've got and try and get started, because it might not get any better under the next federal umbrella.
Yeah, we're all holding our breath. We have no idea what's going to happen in 2026. We have,
Right.
you know, we had programs we wanted to put out there, and we're all holding our breath to, are they going to let us move that funding forward so we can do more outreach and more programs and stuff.
Yeah.
And absolutely, that housing in the PAW is a huge issue. I had 3 graduates last year, would have stayed, would have probably helped staff MMF, had no housing, could not find housing.
Yeah. So and this is kind of on a small scale, you know, the model that we're building for these cooperative childcare centers can be expanded and say, this actually, we can solve a lot of community problems using a similar approach.
Yeah.
It takes time and it takes commitment from everyone, for sure. But there are solutions, and we just need good people to come together and decide that it's time. It's also interesting. The one other thing I'll note is, just in my dialogue with the government of Manitoba, they have more money than applications right now for that capital funding. So, because it's not an easy process, and their program is the same as it was, it's just now they have more funding to roll out the door, but it's very difficult for groups. I mean, if you're trained to be an ECE and run a early childhood learning center, that does not mean that you know how to write the grants, plan a facility, hire the contractors, run the budgeting. There's a whole spectrum of professional skill sets that nobody's assisting with. And that's really the void that our program's trying to fill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's so quiet.
Yeah.
Well, my hope is that extra funding, you know, does it last? Will it come forward? Will they figure out that you need the people first and you need to pay them well, and then you can move forward with the rest of the system, because then they will come, right? So, yeah.
And that at least the one really positive thing is that the emphasis continues to be on not-for-profit.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, when you have that big capital injection, it makes your operating financials more stable. And then the money should go to the employees. You should be, you know, the point of a not-for-profit is not to build a nest egg or to pay the owners. It's to sustain life and make sure everybody's got a good quality program and good quality employees.
Yeah. What I find really funny with Manitoba government, and I think it was previous government, Manitoba Childcare Association, beautiful wage scale, like research wage scale, indexed, payroll, blah, 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 very beautiful. Manitoba government decided to do their own and was way below what the MCCA wage scale, which was a living wage, was at. So yeah, one of my students just asked about, I think they just emailed me in about what the wage is supposed to be. Well, there's a Manitoba government wage scale and there's a MCCA wage scale. And you really want to find centers that are following the MCCA wage scale if you can at all possible, because
yeah, for sure. With our friends to the south, it's not getting any cheaper to survive.
no, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Mhm.
All right. Well, if no one has any other questions or items that they want to have dialogue about, we are here as a resource. We invite you to reach out. We're not for profit and no cost. So it's a good recipe to provide meaningful support. It's great to hear you have childcare in many of your communities. Whether it's enough is the million-dollar question. So if you know of other communities that may not have childcare, it is really important for communities to come together and access that funding now, because that pot of money will be there, we know, until March of 2026. After that date, we are not sure what will be on the horizon. So it's one of those things that if community A pursues the funding and is able to open a space and community B does not, community A is going to thrive in the long term because they're providing those essential services to families.
So just out of curiosity, like they say it takes 3 people to form the steering committee to kind of get this going. Community Futures we won't be part of the committee, but we will support you. We will kind of help with guidance, but we won't make decisions. It will be up to the steering committee to do whatever they want. And I'm wondering if anybody is interested, Jonathan, in being part of the steering committee. Like it would be 3 people, and then from there, then you can start to move forward on it. We're doing this actually with the seniors housing co-op as well, and it's quite energizing to be part of something that's new and like just seeing things happen and figuring things out. So I don't know if anybody would be interested, but ponder it. Y'all have my email address. You can always let me know, Jonathan. Um, if that's something that you'd want to be a part of.
Yeah, especially for the town of the Paw. So I kind of take care of all the zoning applications and work through that with council as well. So if there's any of those fine details that need to be worked out, like those will come come to my desk. And then we'll get it to council, do the zoning process, get approved, all that fun stuff.
And don't undervalue that. That is such an important role, because I was on a meeting with the city of Saskatoon, and that's our biggest barrier right now is the city of Saskatoon and the zoning. There's just, everybody's screaming for childcare. I have groups that are funded, money in the bank, and can't find a piece of property that the city will allow them to proceed on for childcare. It's a barrier. So when you've got a community-minded individual like Jonathan who's going to help you navigate that process, that's tremendous value.
We're working on expanding in Thompson right now too, and it's the same problem, finding the land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, UCN's working on they have to find a piece of land in Thompson because they can't brand new UCN campus, and they can't expand on it. So they have to go look for another piece of land. In the Paw, we have the land. It's just have to expand on our center. So
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's never just an easy fix, but
Yeah.
Our supports are here. If you feel like there's a fit for you, or some of our resources can help you, absolutely reach out.
I do have a question for Laura as well. So currently the daycare at UCN is closed during the summertime. Is
Yep.
that correct? Okay.
Yep.
And then is there any potential like to have it open all year round?
I don't know, because it's on UCN land. It's not UCN run, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
So you gotta follow their
they're all independent. You got to go to their board. I'm not sure why they decided that. Probably because what we serve is the students, right? Students and faculty. That is our main source. So even if we opened for the summer, it would be very short term for probably like not students and not faculty, and then those people would lose those spaces when people came back to school. So that might be one of the things. I don't know if Jennifer or Kendra know more. They're assistant directors there.
I remember one year UCN daycare did open for the summer, but we are set as a full-time facility. So the numbers we got for families and kids didn't match up financially. So it didn't really work out because most of the students are off on the summer.
Yeah.
What about if it was done as, just throwing this out there, as a school age program instead of like a full-time childcare, but for the kids who are in grades 1 to, what it was, is it like 5 to 12, and having it for those kids who aren't in school and they need somewhere to be because their parents are working over the summer.
Well, that's where we have Into the Wild.
Okay.
But Into the Wild, I think they have to be in grade 5 or 6.
Same
5
with
or 6, is
Marigold.
it?
We have to have at least gone to kindergarten, and we do a summer
Okay.
program as well.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Okay.
I don't have kids, so I don't know what the structures are of the different childcares, but having put my daughter through childcare, I am like a huge fan.
From an employer perspective in PAW, I represent Canadian Craft Paper. And from an employer perspective, there is a high demand that we do not have enough services for childcare. The amount of people that could potentially have a job and employment out at the mill, and they don't have daycare. And summertime is even worse. Even temporary staff, there's a whole gamut, right? Of as one of the larger employers in the PAW, and the opportunities for more daycare spots, more access would be greatly appreciated.
And I'm really glad that you joined the conversation, because we actually have a group here in Saskatchewan where one of the mine operators is an institutional partner in the cooperative. And what they did, because they had such a need to be able to have employees that could work, they will hold a board seat and they have a right of first refusal on a certain number of those spots. So you might want to talk to your employer to see if that's something of interest, because you can have a seat at the table at the cooperative, make sure that your staff has access to some of those spots, and have a hand in ensuring that there's childcare in the community.
That's a big of an interest of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks, Keely, for joining the conversation. Yeah. Also, Uptown Daycare, it looks like they're hiring a manager in town to continue running their facility.
Yeah, I heard that on the radio that I think she's retiring. I don't think I have anybody in the class from Uptown. Yeah, I know there's a 3 there, but I'm not sure she's interested in managing. She still likes to be on the floor. But yeah, and there's jobs, because the current managers and the current directors, they're aging out, and they're looking for the new blood and the new people coming up. So we're training them as fast as we can.
Go, Laura.
Yeah, well, I have a class of 20. I started with a class of 22, a couple people dropped, but to have a class of 20 is excellent, from all over the north, and we have some southern people as well from some southern places. So we run it every other year. So we just have a new program that was just approved. So this is the pilot of the program, and we're trying to make it really practical. So they'll spend all of January through May of next year on those finances and on how to do the financial aspect of it. And, when do you need to farm that out to somebody else? Because it's a big job to be a director these days. Like you have to be financial manager and human resource manager and psychologist and all kinds of stuff. So they're very brave, my students. Yes.
I have a question. How does like the cooperative board differ from a regular board? Like what's the benefit of it? Because boards right now are kind of can be a nightmare, and I've heard the horror stories and seen some from my practicum. So
So it's not necessarily the board that functions any differently, it's the membership. So in a not-for-profit situation, you will always have a board of directors to answer to, regardless of how your organization is formed. But what is interesting is that families, community members, people can sign up to be a member of the cooperative, and then that collective membership appoints members to the board of directors. So it's you can navigate a little differently because the membership is a cross section of the community where that the cooperative is serving. Does that make sense?
Could it also be like the people who become part of the steering committee, become part of the initial board, are the ones who are focusing on the development and the build and getting the funding and everything. And then once that is all done and the cooperative is in place, then other people could take over.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's all about how you set up for that transition. So we have had communities where the economic development officer wants to be involved at the start, and then sort of wants to phase out of the equation. So it's all depends how you set up the structure of the board. So sometimes the community wants to have a seat on the board forevermore to ensure it remains a community service that's in place. So for example, the town or the community of the PAW could always have an appointed member on that board. Or they may say, we're going to be on the board for now and we're going to phase out. So there isn't anything that requires that municipality to have a board seat. So it's about how you structure it, whether you want to be involved short-term or long-term. Yeah, and what's interesting about Manitoba, only 20% of the board of directors is required to be representatives of family members or parents or guardians of the children enrolled in the center. Whereas in other provinces like Saskatchewan, it's must be the majority, must be parents or guardians of children in the center, unless you apply for an exemption. And that to me, I really like the Manitoba model, because not all parents have time to volunteer to be on a board. And in my perspective, it should be other community and institutional players to ensure that long-term community tie.
Yeah, I like that model that like the businesses that need workers and like their employees need daycare. The businesses are invested in the daycare. So that's pretty
Absolutely.
cool. There
Yeah,
was a
it's
question in
perpetual.
the chat about
Okay.
the mill physically housing its own daycare, like on the mill site or something, or in-house. Like private entities could also run their own like daycares, or if a business or corporation is large enough and able to just operate one themselves for their workers, that'd be neat to see too.
For sure. So they wouldn't fall under the not-for-profit model if it was owned if it was owned as part of that business and it was just a service to their own employees. But under that model, they would qualify for a tax exemption. So there is a tax credit program with the province of Manitoba that a for-profit entity that's providing childcare for its own employees would qualify for that, but that would sort of be outside of the scope of our project.
It's something to think about.
You bet.
I think part of what I was trying to get at, even with the mill, is would it be feasible for, say, that land to be used as a housing, or as a, sorry, not housing, got housing on the brain, because that kind of needs to happen too. Um, could that not be used as the facility location? And just because, like, even people from outside, like the lake and things like that, coming into town to go to work, like that is an area. I know ideally we do have lots of centrally located childcare facilities within the town of the Paw. We don't really have anything kind of outside of the town of the Paw that's kind of going toward Wanless and going toward these smaller communities. And I was just wondering if that was something, if, say, for example, the mill was a part of this co-op and other businesses joined in, like UCN as an educator provider, and we have our parents, and we have our ECDev person kind of facilitating that group. I was just thinking of, like, I know it's kind of like jumping the gun, but in physical location for that extra childcare spot, I don't know that we've ever considered having something a little bit more out of town. And I don't know. I was just like, kind of like how the Métis has now, they have preferential to Métis children, and once those are filled, the extra slots go to non-Métis children. I don't know if that would be something co-op could facilitate. The preferential goes to the mill employees, and then any extra spots would, because they've now supplied the land
Yeah,
to do
for
that.
sure. And we have a very similar arrangement with BHP in some of the small communities around the new Jansen mine site. So they've provided some capital contribution. They didn't provide the land, but I would no difference in that. And they have a right of first refusal on spaces. So for when they're going to open the doors, 10 of or 20 of the 40 spaces are earmarked, and you have the right to say, yes, we're going to fill them, or no, we'll let them go. And whenever a spot opens up, they go to BHP first and say, do you have an employee waiting? And if not, then they can fill it with the community.
So do you stay with them like after like the site is built and after they're set up a bit? Like, do you like see if their staff are retained, or are they like, are you done after the beginning?
No, we just sort of facilitate to get you ready for doors open, but the province does have your licensing consultants in each region, so they should be your point of engagement afterwards.
Okay. And then so after your completed projects, have you ever went back to see if any of the staff have retained, or if they are having like difficulties with wages still and high turnover?
Yeah, the project hasn't been around that long, unfortunately.
Okay.
So yeah, we only started this project last January, so we are just
Okay.
at the 1 year mark. So we have lots of groups that are sort of progressing towards. We have one that's doors open, a few under construction, and some that are starting construction, but we don't have that track record yet.
Yeah, I was just wondering because like
Yeah.
again, staffing is
No,
tough.
absolutely. Great questions.
Oh, you know what? Keely, it looks like Keely got kicked out when we were talking about the mill question. I'm wondering if we could, Keely, you back? I see she's muted, but she looks
I'm
like she's back.
here. I don't know
Okay.
what happened.
Oh, so there was a conversation about the mill physically providing land to house a daycare. Can we just go back to that too? Because she's the mill. So let's get this idea to her.
Yeah, for sure. So someone had asked in the chat whether the mill could donate land or provide land that would house a center. And I compared it to work that we've done here with BHP around the Jansen mine. And the way it worked here was that They didn't provide the land, but they provided a capital contribution to get the childcare facility started. And then they have what's called a right of first refusal. So out of the 40 spaces that are being developed, BHP gets to first dibs on 20 of those spaces. And so when the doors open, they either get 20 spaces for their employees, or they say, no, we don't have, nobody in our employee pool needs them. Go ahead and fill them from the community. But every time a space opens up, they go to BHP first and say, we have an open space coming. Do you have an employee on your list? And so that's that sort of reciprocal relationship. And they will also have a seat on that board.
So just so I'm clear in my head, but it's not every single space that opens up. It's a space out of that 20 that's allocated to the
Correct.
company.
Yep.
So space number 21 is a free for all.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we get the land, so do we need to wait for the grant to start? How the process will start?
The grant is open now. So in order to qualify or have your grant approved, you have to be at a certain phase in your planning. So it's called a Class B estimate. So you would need your land identified and your building plans done to about 66% before the government will give you final approval on your grant. However, we know that there is more resources than applications. And if you have land identified, we also have access to a number of plans that have worked in other scenarios. So we can do a lot of the legwork to sort of get you to a point where we know that through dialogue with the provincial government, that it's not a question of if they'll fund, it's when you're ready to be funded. It's not really a question of they will elect not to fund. There isn't, from my research, a single community in Manitoba that has enough childcare. So somebody used the analogy of a teaspoon in the ocean. You can drop a childcare center anywhere in Manitoba and it will be full as soon as the doors open.
So I just started my EC3. So if I'll just try to work on that, can I open up any new one, any new location?
You can. Our program only serves not-for-profit cooperatives. So those are not owned or operated by specific individuals. And any privately owned, if it's not a day home, you won't qualify for funding. So the funding is only for the not-for-profit model, but there is nothing to stop you from being a member on a steering committee to start the process and be engaged as a future employee or center director.
So are there any more questions, comments? People want to be on the steering committee? Keely and Jonathan, Laura.
I think I've been appointed.
You've been voluntold. That's the term I like.
Yes.
I
Very
think
good
UCN would have to be approached for me to be on the steering committee as unless I come on as a private person, but then I don't know if there's a conflict of interest when we're building our own and stuff. So yeah.
You could, well, the thing too is like in the beginning and everything, like you could come on like as an advisor. You know, because when I saw that you had when I found your name and said, I'm like, oh, you know, so I was really excited about that.
Yeah.
And then when I got the thing from Tammy saying that Keely was going to be there, I'm like, yes. Because it's I'm excited about this, and I'm really excited to see. And as I said, Cedar Lake will kind of sit on your board just to kind of help organize things and do what we can. And we are part of Pan West, so,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
so we might be able to help in all sorts of different ways.
Mhm.